Welcome to this segment. We will prepare a contribution format income statement and contribution margin ratio. We transition to Excel, in which we will be preparing the contribution format income statement for a company by the name of Gilmore. And Gilmore actually is responsible for the production and sale of CD sets. So the goal of the contribution format income statement, I will define that, is to reflect sales, variable costs, contribution margin, and of course my fixed cost components. These represent key components of information for management. And now I'll define the data composite related to this particular problem. The sale price is $18 and the company had a quantity that it produced and sold of 12,000 CD sets. So I'll go ahead and enter that, and then I'll enter general information related to the problem. I start with the variable manufacturing costs. The problem indicates that there's plastic that's purchased for each of the CD sets. And what I'm doing is I'll be entering in all of the descriptions. Again, the way that I approach problems whenever I have to solve them using Excel is I like to define all of the data first, and then I enter in the numbers. So my fingers move much quicker on the numeric keypad if I don't have to be going back between words and numbers. So this is the way that I stay a little bit more accurate. I have two categories of fixed manufacturing costs. Those are my rent on the factory, the cleaning service, and then the depreciation. So I'll enter those really quickly. And then I get to enter in my fixed SG&A costs. And as soon as I'm done with this process, again, I will enter in the values appropriate for the problem. And everything will be within this particular spreadsheet, so you'll be able to determine where my numeric inputs are coming from. So administrative management salaries is the last one, and it's 120, but I'll go up and I'll start first with the plastic for the CD sets. So that's $12,000. Go ahead and enter that. $30,000. Again, I'm going to move fairly quickly. My fingers can move much quicker over the numeric keypad, so I'll enter those amounts in there and do a little bit of formatting to put a border around this set of data. Again, presentation is always important in any corporate management environment, so that's a key component of any work that I do. So now I'm setting up for the contribution format income statement. I always indicate the company name, what it is that's being prepared, and the date. That's extremely important. Managers do not have time to figure out what someone has prepared and placed on their desk. So the format statement starts with sales minus variable costs, and I have several variable costs, but I'm going to be using the equal and then point at function. Again, the reason I do that, in case you wonder, if I actually am working on, whenever I do work, whether it's consulting or with another company, I create a set of worksheet that I can use again. So in this particular example, if I had a similar problem to solve, the only thing I would be changing is the variables that are inside that box. So just an equal and point. In the same manner, if I made a mistake, I can change the number one place and know that it will correct in my financial statement. The other benefit of entering this data the way that I'm doing it is if I were working and this were an actual company, if any of the variables change, I can change that data again in my input box, and it automatically will update on my financial statement. So all of my variable costs are entered, and I'm going to sum the two of those, and it's $40,500. Now what I did not do was put in total sales, which is selling price times quantity sold. So that's $216,000. Going to subtract the variable costs from my sales, and that's going to equal my contribution margin. So my contribution margin, not too bad in this particular company, is $175,500. So a little bit of a formatting, bold that, because it's a number that I definitely want to draw attention to. I'll subtract my fixed costs. Again, same thing, equal and point at the item. And I'll drag down, and I'll do the same thing with the numerical values as well. Again, this keeps my accuracy in line. So equal point at that, and I'll drag those numbers down as well. Once I have that done, I will do the same thing for my fixed selling. But this time, what I will do is actually type in equal office lease, and then I'll point at the number, and then I'll just drag both columns down at the same time. And that's much more efficient. Once I have that, again, I'm going to subtotal my fixed selling and administrative cost, and that's going to get me my total fixed cost. Again, with the contribution margin income statement, the goal is to see how much I have in variable costs and how much I have in fixed costs. Difference between the two: variable cost changes in direct proportion with my sales. Fixed cost is going to be an amount that I'm going to pay regardless of production activity. So I highlight those just so, again, individuals can see the two subtotals. I'm going to total at my total fixed cost, $167,320, and so with that, I can compute my net income. So from this, I can tell the majority of my sales dollars are going towards covering fixed costs. And even though actually it's a good thing that my contribution margin is so high. So my income before income tax is $8,180. I'm going to subtract my income tax expense, which is 25%. Again, I use a formula. I did not type that in, so I'll put equal and I'll point at the cell that I'm going to type that in. I'll go ahead and define that income tax expense, 25%. Again, if this were a company and that tax rate change, I'll change it one place and it'll update my financial statement automatically. So with that said, I will subtract my income tax expense of $2,000. Again, that's about a quarter of my income. And that's going to yield my bottom line amount of profit, which in this case, net income is $6,135. And that actually matches the check figure that I have on hand. So with that said, just a little bit of formatting. I'm going to center my headings so that the appearance of this, again, is attractive to the user. Even though it might seem like a senseless waste of time, presentation does matter in any management reports. I always take the time just to do that really quickly. I'll also go ahead and put headings for my total and per unit and contribution margin ratio numbers. Now the unit values are extremely important, so that's something that automatically you should just plan on preparing. Unit data is just my sales number divided by the unit sold, which is 12,000. And I'll do the same thing for my variable costs. These values are important so that management knows exactly how much it spends on one CD, plastic covering, the assembly wage workers pay for one CD, and the labels. Again, this is very important information. So when I sum that up, I see that my total variable cost per unit is $3.38. Again, with that information, I can compute my per unit variable cost. Two ways that I can do this. I'll just divide my 175 by 12,000 units, which gives me $14.63. So now I can compute my contribution ratio, which is just my contribution margin over my selling price. So I'll point at that $14.63 divided by the $18, which is the selling price. That gives me 81%. And essentially that, in fact, you know what, I'll go ahead and type it in the body of this worksheet so that the meaning of it is evident. It simply states that 81% of every dollar of sales goes towards covering fixed costs. And that's a pretty solid percentage for management to work with. So that is going to be centered and it'll be just there. Again, if anyone looks at it, they know what the interpretation of the 81% represents. So after putting a border around this, I am essentially completed with this problem. And that's the end of the contribution format income statement, contribution margin, and contribution margin ratio.